What is up, ladies and gentlemen? But most of all, you ladies out there, thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg. Jazz Blazers. Let's talk about it. Split count! We just got done watching an incredible basketball game between the top two seeds in the Western Conference. The Utah Jazz took down the Portland Trail Blazers 118-113. A game that the Trail Blazers led by quite a bit. Jazz came roaring back, took a 19-point lead. Trail Blazers took a late lead in the fourth quarter, and the Jazz ultimately closed the game out. We want to talk about this game because there's so much to look at, and we want to break down the Jazz a little bit, what makes them so good, so successful early in this season. And the Trailblazers are a really, really good basketball team so far. Even with Damian Lillard in and out of the lineup, they've dealt with some injury problems. They're still playing really good basketball. He left tonight with some hamstring tightness, so we'll take that for what it's worth when we're talking about the Trailblazers. But first, please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel. Where I am at right now, it is 1 a.m. I am up grinding, worked a full week, so if you would, please help me out. Hit that little subscribe button. Helps me out a ton, and you'll get a ton of NBA content talking about all your favorite teams in the NBA. So let's start with the Utah Jazz because they are one of the most intriguing storylines in the entire NBA this year. A team that everyone clearly thought was tanking in the offseason for Victor Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson is somehow the number one seed in the Western Conference. And you ask yourself, why is that? Were we wrong? Are the Jazz accidentally good? Or was this Danny Ainge's plan all along? When you look at what Danny Ainge did with the Celtics, he had this ability to not go into full tank mode to where they would truly suck, but also rebuild the roster at the same time. And it seems that might be what he was doing with this Utah Jazz team, that he somehow got good young players as well as a ton of assets and was able to not only not tank, but rebuild this roster on the fly. And that's what Danny Ainge is so fantastic at, building rosters. You see this roster in Boston, and it's simply incredible. But the Utah Jazz right now are fourth in the entire NBA in offensive rating. So they're playing incredible offense, and they're middle of the pack defensively. They're 15th in defense. Now, I think a big reason the Jazz are so good offensively is because of their bench. They have the highest scoring bench in the NBA, and was led tonight by Malik, Beasley, who gave you 29 points. They have Colin Sexton coming off the bench. Taylor Horton-Tucker coming off the bench, who goodness knows why the Lakers couldn't work with Taylor Horton-Tucker. He goes to Utah and he looks like a real NBA player again. That's another discussion for another day. But then the other big thing that I think when you're watching the Jazz is how hard they play, how hard they fight. And this is shown by their offensive rebounding percentage. They're fourth in the NBA in offensive rebounding percentage. Now they're 29th in defensive rebounding. So they struggle on the defensive rebounding side of the court. And that's an area we'd like to see the Jazz start to improve in. But offensive rebounding, in 3-pointers made per game, they're fourth in the NBA. So they're fourth in offense, fourth in 3-pointers made, fourth in offensive rebounding percentage. They do turn the ball over at quite a high clip. They're 24th in the NBA in turnovers, so we'd like to see them tone that down. But when you're looking at this Utah Jazz offense and the way that they're playing together, it's such a joy to watch, and it's led by the highest scoring bench in the NBA. Jordan Clarkson, though, is coming in and closing these games out. He's the fifth highest scorer in the fourth quarter in the entire NBA. And that's what I think the difference is between this Utah Jazz team that didn't beat up on the Phoenix Suns, but beat the Phoenix Suns last night and now beat the Portland Trail Blazers tonight. Two of the top teams in the Western Conference they took down in back-to-back nights, both close games. But Jordan Clarkson's ability to hit late-game clutch shots is so important. And his fourth quarter scoring is so important. And then you bring on Lauri Markkanen, who against the Suns last night played out of his mind, played good tonight. And Jordan Clarkson, I believe, had, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe 13 points, I think, in the fourth quarter tonight. And closed out that game for the Utah Jazz, giving them the win. Now, a couple guys have stepped up that we didn't necessarily expect them to be this good. Lauri Markkanen is playing like a legitimate all-star Right now, if the season ended, or if the All-Star game was upon us, Lauri Markkanen would be an All-Star, and Jordan Clarkson would be right there in that discussion. Mike Conley's also had a bounce back year. He did leave tonight with an injury, but as far as assists-wise, running this offense, he's played incredible basketball. The thing that I love most about this Jazz team is the joy they have playing with each other. Tonight, Jordan Clarkson, in one of his clutch shots, hit one of his incredible running jump shots that he gets up so quick. He's so fast and twitchy. He runs up the court, stops on a dime, and just fires. And it's almost impossible to guard. It's a difficult shot to hit. A lot of players struggle with it, but it's so dominant when you're able to hit that at a high clip. And then once he hit that shot, he starts celebrating, and you see the camera flash over to Kelly Olynyk, who had the biggest smile on his face, just so happy for his teammates, so happy that they're balling. And you have all these players that have bought in and decided that, you know what? Other people might think we're tanking. Everyone in the media might think we're tanking. Our fan base might think we're tanking. And I'm on a Utah Jazz Facebook site, and everyone thought that the Utah Jazz were tanking. Everyone in the world thought this team was tanking. But you know who didn't? You know who didn't buy in? The players. The players on this team said, you know what? We're going to go out there and we're going to fight our butts off and play for our contracts, play for our families. And I'm so highly impressed. And this starts with Will Hardy, the coach of the Utah Jazz. They brought in from Boston last year. He was an assistant under Ime Udoka on a very successful team in Boston. And he was off the Greg Popovich tree. So this guy has had great experience as a coach and now is getting the opportunity to lead his own team and has done an incredible job so far in Utah. And the reason that this is so important when you're talking about the Utah Jazz and you're talking about the start to the season, the Western Conference is truly wide open. There's no one right now that you could point to and say that's clearly the best team. I think the Warriors will be all right, but they are very much struggling to start the season. The Memphis Grizzlies, Ja's going to be out for a few weeks. The Trail Blazers, Damian Lillard's in and out of the lineup. We have question marks about them. The Phoenix Suns are dealing with a lot of injuries. A lot of guys are beat up. Cam Johnson's out. They lost Jay Crowder. Chris Paul's in and out of the lineup. So this team just kind of, we got question marks about them. Dallas, some of their depth beyond Luka struggles. The Denver Nuggets, Jamal Murray coming back from injury. Michael Porter's not playing quite like we thought he was going to. And then you look at teams like the Pelicans, Timberwolves. Those are still young teams. We'll see how they fare later in the season. But the Utah Jazz have a real chance to make a run for the second, third, heck, maybe even the finals this year in the playoffs. At a certain point, I was waiting to buy in on this Utah Jazz team. I think, once you see their incredible start to the season, you're like, is this legit? Is it a flash in the pan? At this point, you have to give them real credit. They're beating really good basketball teams. They're winning consistently. They did go on a little 3-game skid a couple games ago, but they're winning consistently. They're winning at a high clip, and they're beating good teams, and they play really hard. They're doing something that's consistent, and that's playing really good on the offensive end and dominating on a night-to-night basis on that side. Now, 15th in defense isn't even that bad. So if they could somehow get that defense to right around the 10 range, you're talking about a team that I think can contend in the Western Conference and really, really compete. And I'd like to see them clean up their turnovers a little bit, which tonight they had 13, so that's not terrible. But something I'd like to see them clean up a little bit. Let's move over to the Portland Trail Blazers. I want to talk about the Trail Blazers because I haven't spent a lot of time talking about them this year. I think there's only so much you can take from this game because of the injury to Damian Lillard and leaving this game earlier. Obviously, we know that Damian Lillard is the heart and soul of this roster. But it's so well constructed now when you add Jeremy Grant, Anfernee Simons, Josh Hart, Yusuf Nurkic. They added Drew Eubanks off the bench, who's a nice backup big man. Justice Winslow's a good scorer. Shaedon Sharpe, their rookie, has shown flashes earlier in the season. And that they haven't even brought back Gary Payton, who they got from the Warriors last year. So you're bringing in another defender. In this Trailblazers team, you're talking about a real roster and a real team that has a chance to compete. Now, coming into the season, I thought that this team was not going to be very good. I will admittedly say that I was wrong about the Portland Trailblazers. And I have no problem with that because I think Dame is one of the most exciting players in all of basketball. But right now, they're the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. They're playing incredible basketball. And Jeremy Grant, I think for me, has really been the guy who stood out. And I think he's one of those guys that is a really good basketball player that's been buried on some bad teams. He played with the Pistons. He was really in a backup role with the Nuggets a few years ago behind, some of their star players. So him getting a chance to shine in Portland as the number 2 or 3 option has been really solid. And Anfernee Simons came out and has played incredible to start this season. So keep your eye on both of these teams in the Western Conference. Both teams are very good, much better than we expected. But will it last? That's the question mark. That's the question we got to ask ourselves. The Jazz have been very healthy. They're very well coached. I really like this Jazz team. I think they're really fun to watch. One of the most exciting teams in the NBA. And they fleeced the Timberwolves. That might go down as one of the greatest trades of all time because the Timberwolves look terrible and the Utah Jazz look incredible. Plus, they have a ton of assets. So keep your eye open for this Utah Jazz team now and in the future. But that's all we got to talk about for tonight's game. Appreciate y'all watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Cyborg out.